5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds, time go.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
Well, before we begin, give a thanks to our guest who was on our show last episode, Ross Benish. Thanks for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it. And talking about your book.
Yeah, thank you, Ross, for coming on the show. It was great talking about your book, 1999, The Year Low Culture Conquered America and Kickstarted Our Bizarre Times. It was really interesting learning about your book. I'm excited to pick up a copy, if I haven't yet, as of the release of this episode. And I'm looking forward to reading a bit about it.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Ross. It was a great conversation. And also, I don't know if we mentioned this in the episode with Ross. Maybe we did, or at least we mentioned him. But our friend Josh from the Still Loading podcast sent Ross our way.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned that, but thank you, Josh, for sending
Thank
Ross.
you, Josh. And also, if you are listening to this episode and you like video games, check out Josh's podcast, Still Loading.
Absolutely.
I think it's also available wherever you can find podcasts.
I think so too. Wherever podcasts may be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio.
No, I thought it was only Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and that other one that disappeared.
Oh yeah. What was that other one that disappeared?
I don't know. I liked Stitcher. That was a fun.
Stitcher was fun. Rip to Stitcher. Stitcher got stitched.
Stitcher got stitched. It was a good. That was when podcasting was like really big and not just what it is today.
Yeah, where it's just us.
Just
We're the
us
only
left.
podcasters left.
The dystopic world.
Can you imagine a mod for Fallout that replaces the radio with just our voice?
I think that is like the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, we should do that.
I don't want to listen to this podcast though.
But we should just upload it to like Nexus so other people can listen to our podcast while they play Fallout.
Yeah, I don't think other people want to listen to this podcast. But
Well, what have you been recently playing that other people don't want to listen to?
I've recently been playing a game called News Tower. It was developed by Sparrow Knight and released on November 18th of this year, 2025. This year that's quickly disappearing. I was going to say slowly disappearing, and then I was like, well, this doesn't have that many days left. In News Tower, you develop your newspaper and become New York's new media mogul. In this tycoon game, you build and manage a newspaper. It takes place back in the 20s when newspapers were relevant. You are able to send out journalists into the world, figure out different news stories you want to cover, and then essentially build your newspaper with the layouts. If you build like stories that correspond with stories, then like you get benefits. So like if you put like 2 sports stories on the top of the cover, you'll get an extra bonus, or say. But there's different like combos, and certain stories work together and certain stories don't work together. And you essentially lead the game through the 20s and the 30s, and you try to dig up all the latest scoops. I started a newspaper in the intro game. It's like the tutorial game where things slowly unlock and it's not super difficult. I started a newspaper called News You Need. I actually almost named it the Daily Something, and then in the game you're only a Sunday paper, so then I thought it would be funny if I was the Daily Press and it just only released on Sunday and was decidedly not daily. But I have a generic, more time generic newspaper called The News You Need. It is about the news that you need, not the news that you don't. And it's mostly it's mostly a mobbed up newspaper. They've taken a lot of jobs for the mafia and release or don't release stories for the mob, and mostly just run crime and sports stories. They run stories about crime, and preferably that the ones that the mob want us to run, and we run stories about sports, also preferably about the ones that the mob wants us to run. I've got a couple of reporters, a couple of telegram operators, operators, and I've got some other staff. I got a porter, a janitor, mechanic, and typesetters and like the arrangers. So there's a person who like typesets it and then brings it over to the arranger to like build it, I guess, and then it gets put into the printer and loaded in. It's a fun game. It's very much, if you are familiar with Sim Tower, with the vertical building. Do you remember Sim Tower?
I do.
It's got the Sim Tower aesthetic, and it's like a cross section of a building, and you could see the people like walking around sideways to the building because it's a cross section. At one point in time, you run out of space pretty quickly. So I had a telegram room that had two telegram desks, and I had a reporter room with 2 reporter desks, and then I had a typesetter and an assembler one-on-one, like just one typesetter, one assembler. And I decided, in order to be efficient, because what happens is the newspaper reporter, they come in with their story and they give it to the typesetter. So I wanted the typesetters to be near the front of the door. I want the reporters in and I want the reporters out. And so then what I did was I banished the telegram operators to the northernmost portion of the entire building. They got sent to be above where the printer is, which is very loud. The printer is not a room you want to be in because it's a very loud, disgusting, hot machine. And then I put the typesetters near the entrance of the doors, and then I put the reporter desks, one on each side of the 2 different typesetters, and then I put the assemblers at the end. And it's been working out. I think I'm still going to need more assemblers or something because I'm not producing stories fast enough. You have to produce stories to get into your paper by Sunday, and you'll get stories and then it'll be like, this story will be done by Monday, and then you're like, that's too late. And because you need, like, at least where I'm at, my newspaper is 2 pages long and it needs 6 stories, and I've been coming in at like 5 stories in a production week, so I'm like clearly falling short, and I'm spending too much money in order to not recoup enough money. That's part of the game. It's definitely a fun little business simulator, as it were. Definitely, if you're interested in kind of those type of tycoon style games but want to have it about old-timey newspapers, then I would recommend checking out News Tower. It's so far overwhelmingly positive on the Steam store. I picked it up on Black Friday. They ran a deal. Steam ran a number of Black Friday games. I picked up News Tower, as well as, what else did I pick up? I picked up News Tower. I picked up Cleared Hot, which is the helicopter game that came out into early access, which I was excited about. I picked up Captain of Industry, which was a Factorio game that's like more 3D and a little bit more it's different. And then I picked up The Drifter, which is about a homeless man. And so far I've played News Tower and I've played The Drifter the most. I think those are the ones that have resonated with me the most. So, spoiler alert for my future recently played, possibly one of these other games that I picked up. Zach, what have you been recently playing, and did you pick up anything on the Black Friday sale that was almost 2 weeks ago?
I didn't actually pick up anything on the Black Friday sale. I picked up something that was technically, I think, during the Cyber Monday little flash sale they did, which was I grabbed Outer Worlds 2 because I really wanted to play that, though I haven't started playing it yet as of the recording of this episode. I did play a game via Exo Win 9X again. That was Westworld 2000, which was certainly an experience.
Did it run okay?
It ran as well as I think it ever did run.
Oh, good. So It wasn't limited by our technology. It was limited by their technology.
Yeah. The game was originally developed back in 1996 by Brooklyn Multimedia, and it's certainly something. It's a first-person shooter based on the 1973 film Westworld.
Wait, is this the same Westworld that the television show that was very popular with Anthony Hopkins in it?
Yes. Both are based on the Michael Crichton book.
But are they their own interpretations of it?
Yes.
So it's not Westworld, the television show, is not based on Westworld, the movie.
No.
It is based on the Westworld, also the book.
Yes. I'm sure they have references to each other. Like, I'm sure the TV show has references to the movie.
Right.
I think like the aesthetic and stuff like that some stuff might be carried over, but it's definitively its own thing and actually deviates a lot from the original story, is my understanding. But Westworld 2000 is more of a sequel of sorts to
Westworld 2000 is the video
game I played,
based on the movie that is also based on the book.
Yes.
But it's a sequel to the movie, not necessarily based on the book.
Yeah, from my understanding, it is a sequel to the movie, as they do reference events that occurred in the 70s, which I assume is a reference to the movie that was released in 1973. And for those who don't know, Westworld as a concept is this cowboy theme park that you go to where you hang out with robots and you can do whatever you want with these robots, be it shoot them, adult things with them, drink with them, be friends with them. And in the game, they tell you basically this. They tell you you can shoot any of the robots you want. You can, be a law-abiding citizen. You can be a criminal. It's the world is your oyster. And this set up an interesting premise for a game, as I figured the game was going to abide by these rules that this lady in an FMV sequence told me, that I could play the game as I wanted. So the first thing that occurs in Westworld 2000 is you get dropped off on the train, and you step into the town and I walked into a building, and the first thing that happened was a man standing at a table said, "Hey, you just broke the law. Put your hands in the air."
Oh.
And I said, what? And so he started shooting me, so I shot him, and then he died. So then I left that building, and I walked into a bank, and then I heard a voice say, "Put your hands in the air," and a man was standing there, and then he disappeared, and all of a sudden, my health was going down, and my camera started acting up in-game. Then I think I died, then the game crashed. Then I booted it again. Not like ExoWin didn't crash, the game crashed. Like, the 1990s game gave me a error in Windows 95 crashed. So then
these
booted.
These graphics are not great.
No, they're really bad. So then I rebooted the game and I tried to do different actions. And again, I think I got killed, and then the game crashed. I think the game has a lot of promise in its premise, but it is just plain awful as a game. It is not good. And I looked it up, and apparently it was bad at the time. People at the time called it a bad game. And one of my favorite moments, though, is there is some FMV sequences, and there's an opening FMV sequence where you just see a lady sitting there, and in the distance you hear action. And then the lady goes, "Welcome to Westworld." And I was like, they did not edit this at all, did they? It's very good, as in it's very bad, and I don't recommend it for anyone else. Well, to get into today's episode, we're going to do that thing where we talk mostly about stuff that's not video games, and then we're going to talk about video games, because we're talking about something that came to my mind when I've been talking with our dad, Classic Dad. Classic Dad has been on a kick recently of watching shows produced by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, and these shows in particular include things like Space 1999, Thunderbirds, Terrorhawks, and so on. And I was thinking to myself, well, these were some pretty big shows in the time. Thunderbirds especially was a huge show, and they must have had video games based on them. So I did some Googling, and sure enough, there were in fact video games based on Jerry and Sylvia Anderson works. But today we're going to focus primarily on their most successful show, Thunderbirds. So to start everyone off on who exactly these people were, Jerry and Sylvia Anderson were a producing duo that made a significant impact on the world of TV, and became best known for a series of shows that all use the same style of filming, Super Marionation, which is a portmanteau of super, marionette, and animation. Super Marionation. Now, Jerry himself was born in London in 1929. In the 1940s, Jerry's brother Lionel entered the Royal Air Force, the RAF, and was stationed in the United States, where he trained at Thunderbird Field in Arizona. And while he was training there, he would send letters to the family, often talking about his time at Thunderbird Field. Lionel would sadly die in 1944 when his plane was shot down in the Netherlands by enemy forces. The war would end, and Jerry would get conscripted for national service in the late 1940s and was stationed at RAF Manston. His time in the RAF left an impact on his life. There was one time where he witnessed a plane crash and destroy a bunch of cars in a parking lot during an air show, and that was mentioned as something that left an impact on him. And I was like, I think that would leave an impact on anyone who witnessed that. That is terrifying sounding. But in particular, there was another instance he witnessed. A Spitfire plane was coming in for a landing, and the air traffic controller spotted that the plane did not have its undercarriage lowered, so the plane would have crashed dramatically had it landed, because it didn't have an undercarriage properly lowered. And the air traffic controller signaled the pilot in time. The pilot was able to pull the throttle, bring the plane up, reset everything, and then bring it to a proper landing. And Jerry was really impressed by this, feat of coordination, and started to kind of come up with ideas for a show in his mind about what he could do with something like this. And this was the earliest workings of what would eventually become the Thunderbirds.
Following his time in service, Jerry would begin to work for Polytechnic Studios. He served as a director for a period of time, but the studio would shutter in 1955. Jerry, along with other Polytechnic staff, would start a company called Pentagon Films, which would later become AP Films, named for both Jerry Anderson and Arthur Provis. To keep up funding, Jerry would primarily work freelance. In 1957, AP Films would produce its first television show, The Adventures of Twizzle, a show intended for a young audience that features a marionette puppet, and actually multiple marionette puppets. Sadly, almost all of the adventures of Twizzles are missing, a problem with a lot of 1950s and 1960s British television. The only surviving episode is the first episode. Jerry would go on to meet his first wife, Betty Reitman, and get married in 1952. He had 2 daughters and then divorced in 1960. The reason for his divorce was because he had been secretly seeing a secretary at AP Films, Sylvia Tham. After Anderson divorced his wife and Sylvia divorced her husband, the two would get married in 1960. AP Films would continue releasing shows featuring marionettes. This was reportedly to the chagrin of Jerry, who really just wanted to get into live action productions. He was done with the marionettes. However, in Britain, marionettes were popular, so the studio had no intention of slowing down on marionettes. The production of the show Four Feather Falls led to the development of a form of these filming of these puppet productions that would take the name super marionation. This was a technique in filming that utilizes better filming techniques, more detailed puppets, properly scaled items, electronic puppet controls for lip movements, and the use of back projection. While Four Feathers Falls would use a technique similar to it, the first show to actually be credited as using super marionation was Supercar in 1962. The show followed a car that could travel in different environments and would be produced by both Jerry and Sylvia Anderson.
Supercar was a success, so much so that AP Films created a merchandising subdivision called AP Films Merchandising Ltd, specifically to handle the merchandise of shows like Supercar and future AP Film products. The next production that the Andersons would work on was Fireball XL5, which would also be a success. It was actually picked up by NBC in America, becoming part of a Saturday morning block from 1963 to 1965, and it saw continued reruns in the UK on ITV well into the 1980s. The success of the show would lead to AP Films being purchased by the Right Honorable the Lord Grade, aka Lou Grade, who was involved in successful shows like The Saint and Danger Man. I think at the time he wasn't yet a Right Honorable Lord, but that was his name at the time of his death, so I want to refer to him as the Right Honorable the Lord Grade, because that's a great name. After being purchased by Lou Grade's company ITC, AP Films would start work on their next show, Stingray, which would be their first production in color. The studio also was able to move to a new location in Slough, having access to better facilities. This meant better special effects, even able to film underwater sequences, and other technological advances that could be put to use. One particular advancement was interchangeable heads for the marionettes, so that they could show different emotions. Going back a year, in 1963, there was a mining disaster that occurred in West Germany. This event really stuck into Jerry's mind, as he thought of the first responders who aided in the recovery. So he took this idea and some ideas that he had while he was stationed with the RAF, and the name that his brother had referenced in a few letters from while he was stationed in America, a Thunderbird airfield, and Jerry and Sylvia would create Thunderbirds.
Set in the far-off year of 2060, Thunderbirds featured the adventures of International Rescue, a first responder group that had an entire fleet of rescue vehicles that they used to save the day. The group is led by Jeff Tracy and his children, Scott, Virgil, Alan, Jordan, and John. He has a lot of kids. And they make up the whole group.
Yeah. They're just all his kids.
So it's not like an organization. It's more of like a family cult or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like if instead of the Brady starting a band, they decided they were going to build large tanks.
Or the Partridge Family.
Or the Partridge Family. Yeah, instead of the Partridge Family, it's like the Partridge Family built a bunch of large tanks and decided to save people.
I feel like also the Partridge Family was in a cult too, but
Yeah.
The Jeff Tracy family was often assisted by Lady Penelope, who was a London agent who was voiced by Sylvia. Their archenemy that they would fight is a villain named the Hood, not to be confused with Hooded Justice, who was a hero in Watchmen.
Yeah.
Lou Grade was confident in the production of Thunderbirds. In fact, prior to the show even releasing its pilot, he proposed a feature film and suggested extending the episodes from their 25-minute length to 50 minutes. However, the show wasn't cheap, with each puppet costing around 250 to 300 pounds per puppet, which is about 4,000 to 5,000 pounds today, or about $5,000 to $6,000, or 8,000 to 9,000 Australian thingies.
They also call their money dollars out there. They don't call them thingies.
Yeah, but I'm letting Andy know that we're separating the two.
Yeah, at least you didn't call them dollary dues.
Dollary dues, that's what they're officially called. The puppets were outfitted with electronic components that were hidden in their heads to allow for mouth and eye movements. The moving components of the mouth were done using a solenoid, which could sync a flexible lower lip with pre-recorded dialogue, and if it overextended, shot off and flew away. This gave them a distinct appearance, as the heads, because of all the stuff going on inside of them, are notably out of proportion from the rest of their bodies, though reportedly the staff preferred this as it made manipulating them easier, so they just looked weird for the television show which they were filming. Also, Freedom, what is it? The American...
I mention it later, but it's Team America.
Team America.
Yeah.
Highly...
Police.
Yeah, Team America's satiring on Thunderbirds.
Oh, yeah.
The puppets also had separate heads, allowing them different facial expressions. They stood around 22 inches tall and are about a third the average of the human height. So these weren't just small puppets, they were massive puppets.
Yeah, they're decently sized. The heads were sculpted from a plasticine or a clay, which would serve as a template for a mold. The mold would be coated with something called Bondaglass, which was a resin that contained fiberglass, and I assume that resin was uncomfortable if it got on your fingers. That Bondaglass resined mold would then have Bonda paste applied to it, which was another type of, I believe, also fiberglass mixture that would kind of help create some of the more fine details, and they would be painted and such. Wigs would be made of mohair, or in one case, human hair, and the wires for the actual marionettes, as remember, these are marionettes, they're being controlled by people off camera with wires. The wires would be tungsten steel coated in black paint and occasionally powder to make them less visible, though, reportedly, according to puppet designer Christine Glanville, they also would have to reapply paint almost every time they were filming with different backdrops to match the color of the backdrops so that the wires would not appear very obviously on the camera. She said that they would have to set up the camera, look through the camera, see what wires were visible, go over and adjust, go look, go over and adjust. Go look, go over and adjust, go look. And she said every now and then someone would come in with foot after they filmed and say, oh, we can see the wires in this footage. And she would get really mad at them because she was like, we spent so long.
Yeah, and they wanted to extend the show from 25 minutes to 50 minutes.
And they did. I mean, every episode is over 50 minutes long. Thunderbirds would be a massive success and would be distributed around the world. It was carried in over 30 countries, including the United States, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, and Japan. In Japan in particular, it was hugely popular because it often got positively compared to other Japanese productions, such as early tokusatsu and anime of the 1960s. It would later go on to inspire future anime productions, such as Evangelion, but also future tokusatsu projects like Ultraman, and a show in the 1980s called X-Bomber, which used a very similar filming technique with puppets. Oh, also just to clarify, Thunderbirds would only run 1.5 seasons, despite being as popular as it was. So it ran for 1 season, and then they started production on season 2, but I guess the issue was the United States distributors of season 1 didn't want to pick it up for season 2, so it was decided by the company, well, we can't get the United States, we should just cancel. So they canceled the show, literally just because the United States said, no thank you. But it makes sense, I guess, because that was a huge market, so they would have wanted the US to hold on, and I'm sure if they picked up a distributor in the US, it would have gone for another season at least. But I think in total, the whole show is only 32 episodes, each being about 50 minutes. Season 1 consists of 26 episodes, while season 2 consists of 6 episodes. So I guess season 2 is more of like a modern television show of being only a handful of episodes that are really long, and season 1 is more of a regular TV show that is a lot of episodes that are also a little long. The success of the show inspired tons of merchandise, such as toys based on all the vehicles, various licensed apparel, there were books, there were audio plays, there were comics, and of course, there were video games.
There were a variety of Thunderbirds games. All of them would be released well after the show had ended, as it only initially ran from 1965 to 1966. With the show being a UK production, it makes sense that the first games would be for the home computer, specifically the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum, or as our listeners in Britain would say, the ZX Spectrum. Thunderbirds, released in 1985, was published by Firebird Software and reportedly was their only game. You control either the Thunderbird 1 ship or Thunderbird 2 ship, and you must navigate different screens that have mazes on them. Obstacles will block your path and require being moved by your ship. Some blocks can only be moved with Thunderbird 1, and some can only be moved with Thunderbird 2. And some can be moved with both. Along your way, you'll collect treasure. There is also cargo to pick up, but the cargo has weight, so you must be mindful of your total amount, the weight that you need to carry. And one of these, I'm guessing the green ship is one of them, and the blue ship is another one?
Yeah. The blue ship is
that's
Thunderbird.
that's the missile.
No, that's Thunderbird 1. It looks like a missile.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the green ship kind of looks like a, I was going to say like a Star Trek Enterprise, except if you made the head really big and the nacelles really small.
You know what I always thought it looked like was the Planet Express ship?
Oh, it does kind of look like the Planet Express
Which
ship.
I assume might be a reference.
Yeah, and it looks like the Planet Express ship, and the other one just kind of looks like a missile.
Yeah.
Or a torpedo. Or a penguin about to stare at the sky.
Yeah. No, it's those ZX Spectrum graphics were pretty good. Now the next game would just be called Thunderbirds. Again, it was published by Grand Slam Entertainment and released in 1989 for the C64, ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Amiga, and MSX. It's a bit more complex than the previous title, with you taking the role of different members of International Rescue, and you go on different missions. For example, in the first mission, you can play as Alan, Virgil, or Brains, who is another character that is not related to them but helps them out, and you attempt to rescue two miners who have been trapped in a cage deep below the earth. Miners spelled with ERS at the end, not children. You're rescuing people who mine, not people under the age of 18. There are 4 missions in total in this version of Thunderbirds: Mine Menace, Subcrash, The Bank Job, and Countdown to Terror. Each mission plays similarly to each other, acting as side-scrolling exploration games where you must complete specific tasks. The game visually varies between the different computers you play it on, with the least graphically impressive being the ZX Spectrum version, to one of the more graphically impressive versions being the Amiga version. However, from what I've heard, the C64 version is one of the more popular versions, as the music in it is really catchy, and it plays a little better than the Amiga version.
In 1990, the company Pack-In Video would develop Thunderbirds for the Famicom, which would go on to be published by Activision in North America on the NES. This game is a departure from the previous titles in that it's far more action-centric. You pilot different Thunderbird ships in a vertical shooter. You shoot at various enemies, such as what looks like birds or maybe dinosaurs, in a volcano-themed level. The music is also very catchy, and it gives an 8-bit rendition of the theme of the show, which Zach will either have at the beginning of this episode or here. The game was released in both North America and Japan, though notably the box art for the North American version features a generic-looking starship that on it looks nothing like the usual very colorful ship from the Thunderbirds. The Famicom version does feature a still image from the show with Thunderbird 2, which is that looks kind of like the Planet Express ship.
Yes, the big green ship.
Except maybe a little wider and flatter.
Yeah, a little wider, a little flatter.
The one on the cover of the other one doesn't look like anything.
It's just some random, weird spaceship shooting missiles.
Maybe it's an alien. that you're
What I
fighting.
think happened was Activision had this game and they were releasing it in America and realized, oh, I don't think anyone in America remembers Thunderbirds. So, because it was the 1990s, so this was the 90s. So
Yeah,
maybe
that's
they
fair.
maybe they were worried that people wouldn't remember a 30-year-old show. In 1993, Nova Team would release a Japanese exclusive title for the Super Nintendo called Jerry Anderson Thunderbirds Kokuso Kuyojote Shutsoto Seyo, which translates literally to Jerry Anderson's Thunderbirds International Rescue Team Mobilize, which is a mouthful of a name. The SNES game features different gameplay mechanics depending on the level you're in. In some, you pilot the Thunderbird 2 and you must avoid hazards or destroy obstacles in your way. In other missions, you pilot ships like the Firefly, which is a bulldozer that the Thunderbirds use to clear debris. And each mission tasks you with completing specific tasks using the vehicle designed for that mission. So, like, if it's underwater, use their underwater vehicle. If it's, drilling through rock, use the drilling vehicle. It's very much like each level's based on what that vehicle does. There would then be kind of a short break after the 1993 Thunderbirds game, where the next Thunderbirds title would not be released until the year 2000 and 2001. These were Thunderbirds for the Game Boy Color and Thunderbirds International Rescue for the Game Boy Advance, both of which were developed by Puka Games and published by SCI. Both of them are very similar. They are shoot-em-ups, the overall goal being to stop the Hood. Like in the SNES game, you can pilot different crafts depending on the mission. There is also a mission that allows you to drive Lady Penelope's Rolls Royce, aka the Fab 1, where you try to beat a level by a specific time limit. Both games, again, are very similar. The Game Boy Advance version being more visually detailed and even featuring a very choppy video sequence from the show's opening. The Game Boy Color version being less visually detailed but containing similar missions.
In 2004, the live-action film adaptation of Thunderbirds hits theater, directed by Jonathan Frakes, aka Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation. The movie used live-action actors instead of marionettes and was largely considered a commercial flop and overall bad film. Maybe it would have done better if they used marionettes, or,
I think so.
didn't do it in 2004. Because all the movies need video games, apparently, there is a Game Boy Advance game that was released in 2004 to coincide with the film. The Game Boy Advance game is just called Thunderbirds. It's a game that's similar to The Lost Vikings in that you control different characters and must use them to solve puzzles. Each of the playable characters has a unique ability, such as Alan being able to move crates, Tintin, not related to our favorite boy detective, Tintin, who has the little swoop in his hair. This is just another Tintin, who's able to use telekinesis, and Fermit, who is able to hack computers. Another portion of the game features a shoot-em-up sequence where you pilot the Thunderbird ship and blast at enemies.
It's not a good game, similar to how it's not a good movie.
Lost Vikings is a great game, though.
Lost Vikings is a great game. Thunderbirds for the Game Boy Advance is not. I do like that the fact that all of the Thunderbirds games are basically just called Thunderbirds, which makes them very confusing when you try to look them up. Like, they didn't variant. There was no Thunderbirds 2 for, the next, it was just Thunderbirds. In terms of the legacy of Thunderbirds, at least for the show, it left a lasting impact. It helped inspire plenty of Japanese anime and television shows. There were 2 feature films, not counting the 2004 live action film, and there was an anime called Thunderbirds 2086 and a CGI remake reboot, which released in 2015 and ran for 5 years. The show itself was frequently referenced and parodied in the years to come, such as the film Team America World Police, released in 2004, or the short-lived MTV series Super Adventure Team. Thunderbirds would also inspire Shigeru Miyamoto, reportedly in his production of Star Fox 64, primarily with some of the design of that game, but also in the idea of making the characters look almost puppet-like in their appearance when they appear. The games based on Thunderbirds don't have much of a legacy. They have not been re-released in any form, and there haven't been any Thunderbirds games since 2004. In the years following the end of the show, Jerry and Sylvia Anderson would continue making projects such as Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, which also had 3 video games developed based on it. They would make the show Joe 90 and the show The Secret Service, and then in 1970, the Andersons would release UFO, their first entirely live-action series, which Jerry had always wanted to do from the beginning, so he finally got to do his live-action show. The Andersons, though, would divorce in 1980 following Jerry's infidelity with another secretary named Mary Robbins.
He's got a problem.
I know. It's just he sleeps with secretaries who work at the company he works at. Jerry would continue working on shows for much of his life and would pass away in 2012 at the age of 83. Sylvia, meanwhile, would go on to work as a talent scout for HBO, working primarily in London, where she worked for 30 years. She did some consulting work for the 2004 movie and returned to voice acting in 2015 to play Lady Penelope's relative, Great Aunt Sylvia, in an episode of Thunderbirds Are Go, that reboot show. She would sadly pass away in 2016 at the age of 88. And that is Thunderbirds. A little summary of the show, a little summary of some of the games involved. It's a show that the more I learn about it, the more I want to watch it. But sometimes I'm just a little freaked out by puppets. So sometimes I'll look up clips from it and I'll be like, I don't know if I want to watch the show because puppets kind of scare me.
Yeah, that's valid. They're kind of a little weird.
A little disconcerting. I will say the Thunderbirds puppets, I think, look better than the show Captain Scarlet, which they decided to make their puppets more proportionally accurate to humans, and they are a little freakier because their heads are smaller and they are bigger. So Thunderbirds, I think, at least has a more cartoony quality to it versus Captain Scarlet, which looks a bit more realistic, but with puppets. So you're looking at a picture of like Captain Scarlet. Legitimately, I was looking at a picture of Captain Scarlet and I thought to myself, is that a man who just has really smooth skin? And then I looked closer and I went, oh no, that's a puppet. So interesting show, interesting life of Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, two very talented people. A little unfortunate that Jerry had a bit of a problem with infidelity, but alas, that's his history. To get into our retro rewinds, Seth had me play a game called E.T. No More Mr. Nice Alien, developed in 1997 for MS-DOS by an individual named Misty Griss. The game was created for a 3-hour Blender competition where the rules were to incorporate E.T. being scared and Stonehenge. The result is a game where you play as E.T. shooting tourists at Stonehenge. Literally, E.T.'s on one side of the screen and tourists run away from you and you shoot them and they turn into skeletons and die. There is a plot to the game. The plot is basically that E.T. has returned to Earth because his first mission was actually for recon and now he's back to commit chaos and terror.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It was not. It's sure a game that does not hold up. Literally, it's just one button. You press it and you shoot tourists who sometimes it doesn't even run well. It's a weird game. I don't know how you found it. I assume you found it by looking at a long list. Seth, next week I want you to play ARG for MS-DOS.
Thanks. Zach had me play Theme Park for Sega Genesis. It was developed by Bullfrog and published by Electronic Arts back in 1994 and was released on everything. The game takes place around designing an amusement park, and it would go on to coin the theme name, and later that moniker would go on to live with Theme Hospital, also by Bullfrog. The game has you designing and operating a theme park, building rides, and making money. It holds up to a point. Here's the deal. The gameplay is great. It's a really great example of business management with fun and cartoony graphics. It's not as complex as Roller Coaster Tycoon, which will come out 5 years later. If I had a choice, I would play RCT over Theme Park, but that's just me. However, I would definitely also play Theme Park on the PC, which is where I played the game originally. I did not really enjoy playing it on the Sega Genesis. You're packing all the functionality into a controller, and I also don't really map my buttons, and I have no idea what I was doing. And it took me a long time. I think it took me from January to March to place one ride, and I still didn't have a path to it by April. So with that success going, I was probably going to open my park sometime in the next few years. So I decided ultimately that you should just play this game on a PC if you want to experience it. Or there's also fresher theme park games. I think we may even have an episode on theme park games, or at least amusement park games. But theme park holds up just on the PC or on a real Sega Genesis. Next week, Zach, I want you to play The Adventures of Captain Comic for the MS-DOS.
Sounds good. With that, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's episode. If you ever watched Thunderbirds or played any of the games, be it for the C64 or the NES version, I actually found out something I forgot to mention is that the NES version of Thunderbirds doesn't go for a lot of money, but the Famicom version goes for like $400 to $500.
Wow.
Yeah, usually it's the opposite. Usually it's like the NES version of a game goes for $1 bajillion and like the Famicom version's like $3. But no, yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, if you have any memories playing any of the Thunderbirds games or like the show or even like that 2004 movie, let us know. You can do so by emailing us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. Be sure to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Be sure to follow us on social media, be it Classic Gaming Brothers or CG Brothers Pod. We're available on our website, www.classicgamingbrothers.com. We're available on Twitch, and I think that's about it. Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Thanks, Classic Dad, for the recommendation.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And
Thank you, Classic Dad.
don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
Yeah.
That's right.